All right, I'm live. Let me switch over here. I feel like I'm in the dark. Oh, there it is. A little bit better. All right, hold on a second here. Let's hit this. Boop. Okay, got a couple things this afternoon. How's everybody? Happy Thursday. Um, uh, just that kind of day. Got the ends of some spindrift, and then I'll be on to water. What is this? Blood orange tangerine for the working man. What's going on Discord? That out of the way. Let's see. Okay, nothing I need to be concerned with at the moment. Okay. So I posted this morning onto Twitch. It's free, little thing. I mentioned this in a couple of spots. I don't think on a stream, though maybe I have. I've been dabbling with thinking about reactions in a broader sense than what they're normally used for. Just because I'll suppose I'll start at the beginning. A reaction roll and the OSR, but in other games as well. And I'm assuming if you're probably watching this, you probably know about this, but just in case, when you encounter a creature, you roll for reaction. That reaction basically determines how positive or negative that creatures is to the party, and it can range from attack on sight to hey, can I help you in any way that I can, kind of thing. I wrote a blog post. Let's see, back in April, so closing in on a year ago, in which I thought about I wanted to re-envision reaction rolls a little bit differently. Not really differently. Basically, you roll 2 dice. So the classic reaction roll is a 2d6 roll. 2 is hostile, 12 is the most helpful, and then there's a spectrum in between. So I looked at and thought about, well, what if we took those 2 dice and looked at them instead of just adding them together, summing them and looking at the sum, to look at the individual dice and what could those individual dice tell us, and when we kind of put them together, we get more or less what you'd get with the original dice, but you just get a little bit more. There's a little bit more to work with. You're still rolling 2 dice, but you have some more. I guess a little bit more granularity in responses. So, for example, if 7 is kind of they're sort of unsure, hesitating, not sure what to do kind of response, you can get that a couple different ways. In my original one, you might get afraid. They're afraid, but they're also compassionate. So they don't like you, but they don't know what to do, and they're afraid, but they're not hostile. They might actually be a little bit friendly, but they're afraid. Or you could get the same thing, but you might have sad and prudent. Now, why are they sad? We don't know. They're clearly in some kind of depressed state, but that sadness is mitigated somewhat by the fact that they're gonna take it easy. They're not gonna be rash or hasty. And then at the end, you get happy and satisfied, which is more or less that 12, and then kind of angry and apathetic, kind of they're hatred, and they really just don't care about anything. I actually changed a couple of these. I don't know. I don't know what I was thinking when I thought apathetic. Not that it's a bad phrase, but I kind of came up with some other ones. So I already had this in mind. So when it came to making this universal one, I kept up with having these two, kind of splitting things up into two. But I thought about, well, usually we only use reactions for basically your sapient kind of creatures, the intellectual creatures, the ones who are using reason, your humanoids, your monsters that are super intelligent, that kind of thing. You could use it. And I think with animals, we tend to use the original. I think they still apply, oh, the bear attacks you or the bear's not, but we don't necessarily get into too much about the whys and wherefores. Hey, Jason, this is that universal reactions is that thing I posted this morning. And this is just a blog post I put up a while ago that was kind of on the same thing. So I took my original concept. Well, I took reactions, and then I made my own spin on it by splitting up the 2 dice. And then I took that spin and I just broke it down into saying, well, what if we wanted to apply it to different sorts of creatures? And this came up originally in my brain because I was thinking about undead and how one of the things about undead is that often you say, or not often we say, one of the characteristics about undead, and I'm talking here about the kind of mindless undead, your zombies, your skeletons and whatnot, is they're kind of weak little terminators in that they can't be reasoned with. They have no fear. The kind of things that I'm thinking of Michael Bean's character talking about the Terminator, about why they can't be reasoned with. They can't be bought off. They can't be right. That's your undead. The skeletons are going to attack you. They're going to attack you. You can't talk them out of it. You can't really trick them in that way. But I was thinking about in some of the, and I know there are reasons for this in various fictional things when you get into more and sort of different kinds of creatures that generally you'll go in a room with zombies, and if it's not for, sometimes it's just for effect, right? The zombie's not gonna, it's gonna be perfectly still, and then something happens, and then the zombies attack, and you're kind of getting that sort of jump scare kind of element. But other than that, it really is all kind of the same. And I sort of thought about, well, why couldn't you have kind of a reaction roll with undead? It's not going to be the same as with a person. You're not going to, if you get a 12, it doesn't mean they're happy and they want to help you. They're still undead. They're still these kind of unfeeling, unthinking automatons. But we can have that same kind of variance in their behavior. And one of my original concepts with this is it might be, you could look at it as, well, how quickly do they see you? We don't really, I don't know if it's ever stayed anywhere. How, look, a skeleton doesn't have eyes. Okay, well, it's got sockets, but there are no eyes in there. So how does it sense you exactly? What is the range of that sense? I think mostly we seem to consider it kind of being in the same room with them, but there's no reason it needs to be. I mean, they're not seeing anything. So if you're in the hallway making noise, though they don't have ears either. So I don't know. What is the mechanism through which we would establish that the skeleton knows you're there versus not knows you're there? And I don't, we might use a surprise roll when you get into a certain radius. I think mostly it's when you enter a room. I'm sure folks have their different ideas, but we don't really have much variance in there. And then it's always fun to think about what maybe for this skeleton you have to get really close. Other ones are going to see you from across the room, and yeah, you could write that up for an individual encounter. You can say, oh, this undead's not going to wake up until you step on the carpet. Then it's going to jump and attack you. And that's fine. Or you could roll some dice. And we already use reactions. So why not just use your same reaction roll and roll for your undead, but you have to read the numbers a little bit differently. So I just came up with, and I guess I'll blow this up now because I don't need my. So I just came up with, essentially using my two columns, but I did change the columns up a little bit, what they are. So for automatons, I call it energy and awareness. How aware are they about where you are, or aware in general of their situation, and then kind of how much energy they have. So the worst would be activated and enervated. That's your one. They're coming at you, and if you want to read enervated as even being more powered up than normal, however that means, whether it's by electricity, negative energy, magic, whatever, then great, they're good. Then so energy goes from enervated at one end, which is like it's like they're on turbo, to dormant, which is like, yeah, they're asleep, to on the awareness side, from activated, like, yeah, they're up and at them, down to kind of deactivated at the other end. And deactivated could mean that they're just whatever energy, the negative energy, whatever was keeping them going, has just sapped out completely. Or it could be that they're just on such a low power state that it takes something. This could be fun if you had some really old, let's say they're going into a wizard's tower, but it's really old, or a crypt, and nobody's been in there for ages and ages, and there's just hasn't been anything there to activate them. So these skeletons are standing there, but they've got cobwebs all over them. They're all dusty, and it's just they haven't had any kind of, haven't had a charge in a while. And maybe it takes folks coming through once or twice, or doing stuff, and then they kind of over time they wake up, right? Of course, with all of these, you're meant to read them as however makes sense for you, interpretive. So deactivated could just mean like, yeah, whatever, because we never think about other than them being turned or destroyed. So you just generate some undead. They're there forever. That's just energy. The energy doesn't kind of sap out like a battery. It's just ongoing forever. You can look at it that way. You could look at, yeah, it's just been so long since they've been disturbed that they're just at such a low power mode that once people show up, they just start to come alive. And that could be, you could combine them. Well, they're full of energy, but for some reason they're not activated. And you might want to think about, well, is something later on going to activate them, which makes kind of a nice trap, right? If you leave the skeletons alone, you go do something and they flip a switch or activate a trap, and suddenly these skeletons are coming in from behind. Could be kind of fun. You can play around with those. So that was for undead. And then I thought, well, if I'm doing it for undead, and also this will work for golems, I try to be more basic. They're not just undead. I call them automatons because the mindless undead, they're given a command and then they do the command, which is basically like your golems, more or less, or other kind of constructs and things like that. Things that are essentially commanded and they're set up, right? Whatever that command is. Then I made a category for your oozes, slimes, puddings, etc., whatever you want to put in there, cubes. I gave them the same energy, and then I gave them kind of a hunger, because when I think about a slime or an ooze or something, I really only think about that. How much energy do they have, and how hungry are they? So you go from ravenous to glutted. Yeah, it's full. If you find a glutted and sluggish ooze, that's 10, that's an 11. So it's positive is going to be, which means it's probably just going to be defensive. It's not really going to attack you because it doesn't need food, and it's feeling kind of nice and cozy wherever it is. Or you can get it's enervated and ravenous, which means it's super hungry and it's really active, so it's coming for you, kind of thing. Tendrils flinging its tendrils out at you. Hey, Brian. Brian says activated baddies like in stasis tubes. Yeah, it could be. Absolutely. And then I did one for animals, which I gave them a set of focus and an attitude. So the focus are things like, well, what are they kind of doing? What are they? I try to think about. This is maybe the most difficult one for me anyway. When I was working on this, was just you roll up an animal, and maybe it already has. Obviously, if it already has something it's doing, you can use the classic roll, because the classic roll will work fine. But if you were, say, rolling up on a hex crawl, you're rolling up a random animal encounter, you get, oh, it's a moose. And okay, so now you want to roll for the moose. Now you get some things. Well, is the moose looking for food? Is the moose in a defense minded? Is it defending somebody, something? Does it have a calf, a lair, whatever, right? Okay. Family could be the same. It really similar thing. Is there a little kid moose that's around? Defense could also be, say, if I don't know if moose are territorial, but that could be another option, right? Anything like that. Is it migrating? Is it really just wandering through? Is it curious? Is it like, oh, okay, I'm good, but I'm kind of curious what you guys are about? It heard a little noise and it just decided to check it out, or it's resting, And then attitudes. I think the attitudes are mostly the same with the humanoid, the intellectual types, but you got desperate, aggressive, defensive, nervous, wary, and calm. So obviously, calm would be your kind of high end. And then I've got essentially the same. Pretty much, I changed a couple of words around, but the attitudes for sapiens, this would be your humanoids, really the higher level intellectual kind of creatures. Desperate, aggressive, prudent, curious, optimistic, and hopeful. And then on the emotions front, angry, disgusted, afraid, sad, surprised, and happy. So, and you have to, of course, decide what those are, and you can always just sum the two numbers. I mean, what I like about this is I'm not adding what I liked about what appealed to me in the blog post is the same thing that appeals to me here. You still have your two numbers. You can use this instead of the classic the classic reaction. You can use this in addition to the classic reaction. So you look and say, well, I've got a 3, which would be really negative, and then depending on what the two dice say, you get to shade what that means. You can use it in a number of different ways. You could even use it if you wanted to use them separately. Oh, okay. Well, this is another situation where maybe I have the situation and kind of the reaction sort of set by context, but I want to get a little bit more about this person, so I might roll. You see the shopkeeper. Maybe you don't need to roll a full reaction roll. You're just like, I just want to know kind of what emotional state the old shopkeeper's in. Let me roll. Oh, I got a 4. They're sad. Oh, so sad. And so that's all it is. It's really easy peasy, but it's something that I think could be useful. I get the sense that I've seen with different procedures that people like when they can do the same procedures, where you can have a repetition of procedures. And I think I've seen this when people are talking about dungeon crawls. And I think to me, at least what I'm thinking, and you guys can tell me if I'm right or wrong, is that I think what a lot of folks like about the overloaded dice and those kind of things is that every turn you follow a set procedure. Whereas classically, some things are like every 4 turns you're going to do this, and every 6 turns you're going to do that, and every 8 turns you're going to do this, right? Okay, instead of saying, you know what, we're going to wipe all that away. We're just saying every turn, do this over and over and over again. And then to get different things, you overload the dice so that your dice are kind of meaningful, doing something and hitting. Instead of having these various things, you put them all the different results, like the lights going out, or your need to take a rest, or whatever those things happening. They're all triggered off the dice, but you could do it every turn. So you just have to get in this rhythm of, okay, back and forth, almost it gives it a little bit more of a board gamey feel. Like you're just setting that kind of like every round. What do I do? I ask you guys what you're doing. I roll these dice. I interpret, I go on around and I go on around. I go on around. So using something like this, means that you can have a similar formula that you can use for every encounter. If you like to be able to do the same thing over and over again because you can kind of internalize it better and you're not thinking about it like, oh, these guys get one of these guys don't, then you can use this as part of your, hey, just every encounter, roll 2 dice and put them aside for some kind of reaction. And you can use it regardless of whether they would technically classically have reactions or not. Like, no, you can still use them. Just figure out whether it's an automaton, something mindless, it's more or less an animal, and that, animal, vegetable, right? Anything that's kind of has some sort of instinctual kind of creatures, or if they're intellectual, use that one. That is all of it. I put a link. I think I put a link in the show notes. I tried to get slightly ahead of the game and put a link in the show notes for it. But if not, you can go to itch, look for Hexed Press, and you can see all that stuff on there. And it's free. It's free. It's it's one of these things I put up for patrons, and I figured I would share it on itch. So if you feel like becoming a patron, always thanks to my patrons and channel members. If you enjoy this stuff and you'd like to support me doing more, those are 2 options you have. But that's there for you. All right, now on to thing number 2 on the docket. Dirtbags. So Dirtbags by the Dungeon Key is currently on Kickstarter. I'm going to put a bunch of qualifiers and things. So a couple things. Jean-Luc, aka the Dungeon Key. I'm a friend of Jean-Luc's. I have helped him on prior products. I am going to be participating in. I don't know if it's I should probably pull up the Kickstarter. Let me get the Kickstarter up and running. So I don't know what he's written about it. So let me get this up here too. Okay. Can you guys see? You guys see the Kickstarter? So, all right. So let's see this Dirtbags. Hey, it's already been funded, which is great. Get about the project. Let's see. Here it is. It's in. We're gonna go through this quick start. So I'm not really gonna be scrolling through here too much. Got 3 mini adventures. Incursion on Syntax Station. I think this is the one that so amongst the things, so I'm going to be helping out on the Kickstarter. Like I said, I don't know if it's been made fully public yet. I'll see if it's listed on the Kickstarter. We're going to be, there's going to be a stream later on this month where we're going to help. There's a few of us who are going through and collectively creating an adventure. And I think I might be last in the order. I'll let you know more as it kind of gets closer and things happen. I think it's going to happen next month. I mean, in February. So coming up, but I think in a couple of weeks. But I know this adventure is already done because this is what he ran at PAX Unplugged that I played and had a lot of fun. I'm pretty sure I talked about it on my PAX Unplugged like kind of wrap up stream. I don't know these other ones, but there's 2 more: Life in a Ditch and Rescue on Gillon 5. Got a character sheet, a patch, got some pledge levels. What are they saying? I think I have a quote here. Maybe. There I am. And there I am again. So har har. Yes. So had a great time playing it. I wrote a thing. If you're interested in my exact words, you can read it over there. We'll go through the quick start. So this is kind of I thought he did send. So I do have a copy of, I think, a more complete, or at least whatever the rules are now. But I thought, I'm just going to roll with the quick start, which is what you can grab for free. There's a link here somewhere to there's a link. If you open this link, it gets you here to the Dungeon Key website where you can grab for nothing the quick start. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. So a bunch of caveats there. He didn't ask me to do this. I'm just doing it because I think it's interesting. I had a lot of fun playing in the mini adventure. I really enjoyed it. I really like the system. It's kind of similar in some ways and different in some ways. Stuff that I've been working on, and it's just kind of fun and it's well done. And I am biased. I am biased. This is not a blind read, so to speak. I didn't get a chance to read through the rules super in depth when I was playing through it. I know he had some copies. I don't actually think I got one, so I don't have a copy of it. So we're gonna go with the quick start, and maybe this will give you guys a taste, and then, in a sense, a preview of what's to come. I'm excited to work on the adventure. It'll be, I think there's 3 or 4 of us who are taking part, but like I said, I think I'm last in line. So you're not going to see me until the towards the end, and I'll stream it probably on the main channel. Well, and it's going to be, I think it'll have to be over a weekend, or on, I think it's on a Sunday is what we currently have soft sense, soft schedule at the moment penciled in. So we'll look for that. All right, so let's get into this. So Dirtbags Quick Start Guide, sci-fi shooter RPG. Got some table of contents, dungeon key. That's great. What is Dirtbags? Dirtbags is a rules light cinematic sci-fi shooter RPG. I'm laughing because on the yesterday, was it yesterday that where we looked at Grimwild, and it talks about cinematic, and I was talking on one of the discords, and we kind of got into discussion about what the heck cinematic means and what are they driving at. MCDM used cinematic to describe Draw Steel, and obviously Grimwild used cinematic. Here they're using cinematic. I will say that, to me, this is a cinematic kind of game. Ian says, I love cinematic. Yeah, I love cinematic. I will say, again, I'm biased, but having played it, and we'll get into it more, this game and the kind of adventures it do, I think the quote that I threw up gave to him for the Kickstarter, kind of, it really does aim at kind of making your sort of 80s sci-fi kind of movies. Think Space Marines in the Aliens movie, or Running Men from Running Man, or any of those other kinds of movies where it's sort of, you're these kind of bottom of the barrel grunts kind of sent out to do something, no life expectancy, not expected to live, no respect kind of thing. It really does aim at that kind of experience and go with it. So I really feel like it does channel that kind of, you're making your own kind of 80s grungy sci-fi movie. Fifth Element would be another one, just in terms of, you're at that kind of, the what's the guy's name? What's Bruce Willis's character's name in the Fifth Element? I don't remember, but just that kind of vibe. So if that kind of cinematic experience, or just experience in general, appeals to you, then I think Dirtbags will serve you well. All right, players, known as Dirtbags, take on the role of convicts in a corporate-run dystopian world, coerced into the Military Foundation's Rehabilitation Incentive Program, aka RIP, with the promise of freedom and reintegration. Forced to endure relentless tours of duty, Dirtbags are expendable, thrown at every problem imaginable, from distant alien bug infestations and scab pirates to suicidal salvage missions, courier work, and anything else the corporate echelon demands. Yeah, so there it is in a nutshell. And I think it, like I said, and at least the adventure I played, and obviously I think the system really works for that. And if the adventure that I played was any indication, that's what you're kind of going to get, which was a lot of fun. Inspiration and themes. Dirtbags draws inspiration from countless sources, including Starship Troopers, Tank Girl, Aliens, and more. Makes sense. I'm not going to go through all of this, right? So we got some dice notation, D2, D3. It's a lot of D6 dice pools, and then a D26, where you're going to use the first. You're going to roll 2d6, but the first one is you're just going to treat as a 1d2, and the second one as a d6. And now we get the Dirtbag Manifesto. We're all born dirt side, into the slick. Our infant cries drowned out by the hum of industrial machines. Steamers, cutters, stampers, presses. Below manufacturing plants and fulfillment centers sprawl like cities, catering to the divine, the ultra-rich. Oil frack cats and pseudo-pharmacons. Filth and soot are our uniforms. Vice dens our only escape. Steal, kill, bounce. We do what we have to. Some of us are wanted, but none of us are loved. We aren't just outcasts. We're dirtbags. And there you go. All right. Basic training. So, I almost wonder. I don't think are they going to give a character sheet here? Because the character sheet kind of makes it really clear what's going on. Let me see if they have one. Oh, we get, wow, even nice. You get a little sample mission kind of thing. Okay, we don't get a We don't get a character sheet. So we'll start from the top. All right. So essentially, the way it worked at PAX, the character sheets, I don't know if they're final. They look nice. So if they're not final, they got to be close to final. Basically, you have two pools that you're tracking. One is going to be ammo, and I think one are your actions. Maybe I should get this. So, okay, so you have a reserve. Dice place reserve or out of play. Draw from reserve in order to replenish your action and ammunition pools, right? So you have action and ammunition pools, and they have so many dice in there, and you'll roll up your character and you'll figure out how much dice you get, and then your ammo is your gun. When you're doing stuff, you're utilizing dice out of those pools. Ammunition dice when you're attacking with at least guns and similar ammo-driven weapons, and then your action dice when you're doing other things. And both those pools will be draining over time. Sometimes quickly, sometimes not too quickly. Obviously, it's going to depend on what you're doing and you know how efficient you are, and of course, just there's some luck involved in terms of just how you're rolling and what you're up against, so on and so forth. And then you have different methods for, as I say here, replenishing those pools, because as your dice you're getting drained off, you have less actions to work with. And you can do things like in the middle of a combat, you can spend a turn basically getting some actions back. But of course, then you're kind of exposed for that turn sort of thing. And obviously for your ammunition, you could reload your gun. But if you're reloading your gun during combat, that can be dicey. And there's a fun little thing there. And I know during the PAX game, I think I've tried really hard, and I think I succeeded at never reloading during combat, because I had some quirk where it was going to be harder for me to reload under pressure than normal. So I saw that and said, well, I know one thing. I'm going to try like heck to never reload in combat. And I didn't. I was able to kind of, keep my ammo, just, use it enough to do that. Some weapons, if you're looking like, well, what if I have an axe? Well, if it doesn't use ammo, then it uses, actions instead, basically. But we'll go through this. So you got the reserve. I don't know. I'm not sure why you put this. I'm not sure I would put this first. Oh, no, here it's because it's not first. All right. I should have gone up one more. So, yeah, okay. So ability scores. Each score has a current and maximum value, and that indicating the number of actions of that kind you can take on your turn. Right. So we've got your action pool of 6-sided dice. Your default success when you're rolling those dice, 4 to 6 is your default. You get, if you roll with advantage, I kind of wish you would use a different word. I think I even mentioned it's because it gets so mixed in with 5th edition, and people have I think since 5e had popularized, or I guess I don't know if that mechanic existed previously with other names, but since 5e, advantage has a very specific meaning to people. And so I think that give it a different word, just so that people don't get confused over, if I say, hey, roll with advantage, they don't grab a second die. It's like, no, you're not grabbing an extra die. You're just increasing your range. And disadvantage decreases your success range. So by default, you have to roll a 4 or higher to succeed. If you have advantage, it becomes a 50% deal, from 3 to 6, or actually even more, like a 66 whatever percent deal. And of course, if it's disadvantaged, then you drop, and now you only have a 33% chance of success. And then if you're really disadvantaged, you're on a 6. Burnout. When your action roll produces 1 or more failures, you remove those dice from your pool and place them into your reserve. So you're going through actions. If you're lucky, which could happen, because you're going to decide, depending on what you're doing, and I will see if he gets how far into this you get. But one of the kind of the neat things about the system, it reminded me a bit of the D6 Star Wars, the West End Star Wars, is you can chain together complex sets of actions, but then you have to roll enough successes to make it through all of your actions. So if you say, well, I'm going to run across the room, then there's one action that you would roll to say that I run across the room. I don't remember if just moving would even trigger a roll for your action, but let's just say for this instance it will. We'll check later. So you're running across the room, you say, okay, that's one action. In another sense, you say, well, I'm going to run across the room and I'm going to hurtle over this table. Well, now that's 2 you got to roll. So at least 2, because you have to make 1 for the running and 2 for the hurtling. And again, you may not have to roll for running, so apologies, but something like that. Okay, so now you're hurtling, so that's now next round. Now you're like, okay, I want to hurtle and I want to, hit this switch. So I got to run across the room. I got to hurdle this obstacle. And then there's a switch on the other side, and I'm going to dive. I'm going to grab the switch. I'm going to hammer the switch down. Well, that's the third one. Now you can roll as many dice as you want, but if you don't roll 3 successes, you're not going to make it through all those actions. So if you roll 2 successes, you're going to be run, you're going to hurtle over, so you'll be over the switch, and then you'll try to grab the switch, and you'll miss, and maybe you'll slam into the corner, whatever it is. But now you're over by the switch on your next turn, but you weren't able to pull the switch. If you only rolled 1 success, and maybe you're running across the room, but then you hit that obstacle and you bang into the obstacle and you don't make it over, in which case you don't get over to the. You see what I'm saying? So it's kind of cool in that sense of you can make as complex a sequence. In a sense, you can make as complex a sequence as you have actions to support. You obviously can't say you're going to do 20 things because you only have 6 dice. But you could maybe do, if you feel like you can get that many successes, if you want to try to do something that has kind of 6 stages to it, it doesn't have to mean that it takes 3 times as long. You can imagine you're trying to do something, just do something complicated. The more complex you get, the more successes you need, which is going to mean that it's harder to complete, but you can try it. The other part of it is that the more dice you're risking, the odds are you're going to get some of those failures, and then those failures are going to remove those dice from your pool. And I always like these systems. I've monkeyed around with these systems for a while. I like it where you're risking dice to use hero dice in my BX home game. And I talked about that for spells and things where, hey, you can roll as many dice as you. If you roll certain values, you lose your dice. So you really want to make that spell. You want to roll a bunch of dice to make sure you get it, but that also means you're probably going to lose some dice that you wouldn't if you rolled the minimum. But with the minimum, you might not have a great chance of making the spell work. Similar thing here, which I like. All right, so okay, critical successes. If you roll 2 6s during your action roll, it replenishes one of your action dice from your reserve. So that's another way to get things back. Great. Resistance. When resisting the effects of internal or external forces or conflicts, use your action pool and roll a number of dice up to your relevant ability score. A single success is required to overcome the challenge. This is kind of like your saving throw, but you get that same risk reward. So you've been stabbed with a poison needle and you're like, I got to resist the poison. And I don't remember we'll get to what I don't think they've given us they haven't given us the attributes yet, but we'll say, okay, roll your, I'm going to roll my constitution dice or my toughness dice. If I roll success, boom, I've resisted. If I don't, I haven't. But I don't know if you lose. I forget if you lose those also to the to that reserve. I don't remember. So I don't know if it says when resisting the effects of internal. Okay, a single success required. Expertise, resist with advantage if the corresponding ability score is 3 or higher. That's always nice. I don't know if you lose these or not, but obviously it is you are taking them from your action pool. So the more you've spent, then the less you'll have to resist things, which is kind of nice. It's that kind of it gives you that a little bit of an exhaustion vibe of, okay, I've spent almost all my action pool. I've got 1 action pool left. Maybe I've got 5 in some ability score. If somebody hits me with something, oh, I got a 5. It's like, well, okay, I'll get that advantage, but I only got 1 die. So I'd love to have been able to roll more, and I can't. All right. So the action sequence here is you describe what you're going to do. I'm going to run down the hallway. Oh, look at that. I didn't even read the example. And it's almost, except he's throwing a grenade. So you describe what you're going to do. And here's the example. I'm going to run down the hallway, which is 1, dive behind cover 2, and throw a grenade 3 at the advancing swarm. Choose as many dice from your action pool as you like, then roll. The results from rolling these 3 out of your 5 action dice, 1, a 6, and a 4. For each success, complete an action in the order you described. So you got 2 successes. So the first thing is you successfully run across the hallway and dive behind cover, but you fail to throw the grenade. The 2 success dice stay in your action pool, while the 1 failure is moved to the reserve. But I don't think it's meant to be, and I don't remember, I think you probably play it different ways, right? I don't know if this is meant to be, it's not really a crit fail situation. So it's not as if because you failed that last one, you fumbled the grenade and it's going off at your feet. It's more like, at least I would read this as more, you run, you dove, and then you're just fumbling with your belt trying to find the grenade. And that ends up being the time. By the time you're able to get to the grenade, obviously we're into the next round, right? That's that part of that. For you, it's real time in the fiction, but now we go, cut. And then when we pick back up again, you found the grenade, but just some time has passed. You were delayed, kind of thing. If you still want to throw it, obviously you don't have to. So we talked about the reserve. You can take a breather. Out of combat, you rest for at least 15 minutes to basically take a short rest, and you get your action pool back, and you get 1 point because you can lose ability scores. You can get one back. And then during combat, you can skip your turn to get your action pool to replenish your action pool at the start of your next turn. You can still use your die pools for defense. So you can still do some defensive things, but you kind of, you're wasting a turn, which, given the way things can go in the game, it's not a small deal. Sometimes, it's one of those things, if you plan it right, you could do it and there's not much effect. But there's obviously, like all things, if you're out of actions at the wrong moment when something's happening, that can be pretty dire. Sometimes you need all hands on deck, so to speak, to get something done. You can choose to exert yourself, which means you reduce one of your ability scores by 1 temporarily, and then immediately replenish your action pool to its new max by drawing dice from your reserve. So basically, the amount of dice in your action pool is the sum of at least 2. I forget if it's 3 attributes there are, but in any case, you basically sum them, and that's the dice you get. So by taking one down, you can get, by reducing your attribute by a point, yes, you get your dice back, but now your number's lower. So if you had 6 and 3, so you had 9 dice, and then you drop it to 5 and 3, you're going to get those dice back, but now you're only going to get 8. And of course, if you keep doing this, it will eventually, you will find that your dice pool is decreasing. They're kind of playing loosey goosey with distances, as a lot of games are. So it's kind of close, near, far, which I think works for this type of game. Works really well. I don't feel like you need kind of much more granularity than that. Movement, no actions required to move within close range. 1 action to move from close to near, and 2 to move from close to far. So that's kind of a nice thing. So if you're close distance, you're here and the enemy is far, and you've got your axe, you're trying to run across. You need, 1, 2 actions inside there next to you. Then you're just kind of in that sort of melee cloud, so you can get around, but then further off, right? And I think that's a nice way. Means that charging across, you could do it, but it's going to penalize your actions, which may or may not be important. You can carry, and remember, you got to make those successes. So you might get caught in no man's land. You're trying to get here, but you only get 1 success. Like, oh no, now I'm sort of caught. If they're firing at me with missile fire or guns or whatever, I've run up into the middle and I got nowhere to go. Carrying capacity, you can carry 8 plus your bones. They give I don't think he gave what the no. All right. Bones is one of your attributes. I was wondering. I was saying I don't think we've seen what the attributes are actually called yet. So 8 plus your bones worth of regular sized items. The carrying capacity, blah blah blah. Yes, you have encumbrance. You also have the prisoner identification collar. This is kind of like in Running Man, where you have that that collar around the neck that will pop your head if you try to escape. We spent not an inordinate amount of time, but once we definitely, when we were playing, this is just from my experience playing, we definitely sidetracked our objectives to get those collars off, and we did get the collars off. But it was tight. But we definitely there's a medic station. There might be some things here. Like, can we get the collars off? We were all about trying to break free of the dirtbag system. I'm meaning in fiction. We did not want to be dirtbags anymore. And then there's this thing called milk. At the start of each operation, your prisoner identification collar is loaded with a number of muscular intravenous liquid coca energizer shots, aka milk, equal to your nerves ability score. So that's another ability score. So you have bones, nerves. I think there's one more. You can consume a dose as a free action anytime to do one of the following: gain an advantage on your next roll, re-roll any number of your dice, negate 1 to 3 hits, ignore your ability score limits, or spend an extra success to take an additional action on your turn, placing the die in your reserve instead. The thing is, the more milk, there's I guess it's probably in the main rules, but it's not just a freebie. If you rely too much on milk, you risk something. I can't remember but there's a cost to milk. I mean, I don't know how many they say they give you, equal to your nerves. Yeah, but there's still a cost. So you don't want to get too down deep in the milk. I ended up not using it. I guess I didn't have to. I think somebody else did. Did we roll? I can't remember if we rolled dice or whatever was going on, but you definitely want to be at least not too gung ho about guzzling down milk. All right, so now into the basically your combat section. Players generally act first in combat, but if they're caught by surprise, they can resist nerves to act before the enemy. That's kind of cool, right? So you can essentially, if you're caught by surprise, then you can prioritize them amongst yourselves whether you want to try to, theoretically spend dice to not be surprised, which I think is kind of nice. Again, it puts it on sort of the player side. Hey, we got these dice, but it's a resource, up and down. But do I want to spend it? Do I want to just go ahead and eat this potential surprise? How do I want to do it? I like that. It becomes not just a state of affairs, but also a little bit of just an interesting decision point of how much do we want? Do we want to spend things to not to negate this particular what we call it, status actions? Players can use their action pool once per turn, declaring all actions before rolling. They can use their ammunition pool to fire multiple times anytime during the turn. Hey, Vince. Oh, hey, Vince. Vince says, neat form of resource management. Yeah, no, it's cool. I mean, like I said, I've been messing around with dice pool stuff. Mine doesn't work exactly like this, but yeah, it is neat. And it's playing in person, I think, is really nice with this because everything's visual. You have your dice on your sheet in these two boxes that represent your active pools. You can get dice with different colors and things. Like, if he actually had dice with different colors, but the colors end up being very very close to the same. They weren't really contrasting colors, so they were hard to tell the difference. But you can have red dice for your actions and blue dice for ammo, or vice versa. And it really is visual. It's tactile. It's very easy to see. You're picking how many dice you're going to use. It is a fun, kind of nice system. And of course, who doesn't love rolling a bunch of dice? You get your ammo pool. Shooting, firing a weapon is a free action. Does not need to be declared. You can fire before, during, or after your actions. Your weapon's capacity and firing mode limit how many ammunition dice you can use to fire in a turn. Once used, place the ammunition dice in your reserve. Yeah, so shooting's really nice. You just, they work the same, but you just drawing out of a different pool. So it doesn't consume your actions to fire your submachine gun. You can just, your submachine gun, I don't know, say like you can fire in this mode or this mode, however many dice. Of course, the key thing is you tend to be fairly limited in ammo, at least in the adventure we played. I think I had 2 magazines. I think we found 1 magazine that fit my gun later on. So throughout that whole adventure, I had 3 magazines. So you just can't, you can't just go willy-nilly blowing everything. You got to be a little bit like, how many am I I'm gonna. And the thing is with the ammos, unlike your actions, they're gone whether you hit or miss. They're done. So deciding with a creature bearing down on you how many you want to fire, it's a real decision, especially as you're getting started. You don't know, or even actually really in any times, you don't know, like, man, how many more fights do we think we're going to be getting into? Do I risk rolling a bunch of dice because you really need to get through this guy? But if we get through this guy and I'm empty and there's somebody else behind them, I'm going to be a little bit out of luck. Of course, that's just when you have to use your ingenuity. But yeah, it is a fun, tactile, satisfying resource management. Reloading, you can reload. You can have your firearm malfunction, and you can also, because your weapons have range, so your gun may just, like, you may have a sidearm that's basically just close range. Some may have a far, and so you want to go beyond the range. You need to use dice. So firing a firearm, choose a number of dice from your ammunition pool up to the limit allowed by your weapon, then roll. Results: rolling 4 out of your 6 ammunition dice, 4, 2, 1, and 5. Check for fire malfunctions. Results containing 2 or more ones cause your firearm to malfunction. Take an action to clear your firearm before you can fire again. For each success, score a hit against your target. Pretty easy peasy. And the nice thing is too, right, is you're rolling them, it's something that makes sense in terms of the malfunctions. If you're rolling a 1 die, you'll never be able to malfunction, but you're not going to shoot very much. You roll 2 dice, the chances, like, it's like rolling a 12 or a 2 on 2d6, still pretty low. But as you're rolling more dice, the odds of you getting that 1 increase. So it's kind of a cool escalating risk reward system. Man, I really just want to turn on full auto and roll all 12 of my dice, but not an insignificant chance at that point that I might get a jam up. And we're dirtbags, so we're not getting. It's also there's that um, thematic part of it too. We're not getting the best. We're the dirtbags. We're getting the crappiest equipment. We're getting the least we can do. We are, you're the grunts that are expendable. So your weapons jamming and other things not being right are absolutely thematically, core to the game. Okay, and then you have your defense pool. You can use your action pool or your ammunition pool or both to defend yourself. The idea being with the ammo pool is, let's say you have some kind of, I don't know, Starship Troopers type insect jumping on you. Using your ammo pool in defense is like you just start blasting your gun up and just willy-nilly at it to try to get it off of you. And so maybe it succeeds and you don't get off, but you're not really doing damage to it. It's just more like you're using the ammo to negate the attack. With something else, you could probably explain it away. Like, yeah, I was shot with a machine gun. Like, I fired my own machine gun and I deflected the bullets. Like, I don't know, right? But that's kind of the idea. Is you're just using whatever you got. But again, you're depleting your pools. So the more you have to do that, the more dice you risk to do that, then obviously the faster those pools are getting depleted. You have armor. Absorb hits to the body parts it protects, reducing its armor value with each hit absorbed. When its armor value is 0, it is destroyed. Also, right, same thematic element. We're not wearing really good armor. We're wearing kind of just, we're wearing the kind of the lowest kind of gear that, is made. So yeah, our stuff we're not replenishing armor. We're wearing stuff that has a certain amount of life expectancy to it. And when it's gone, it's gone. Light armor takes 1, carrying capacity 2 for medium, heavy for 3. You can use your action pool for a melee. Hand-to-hand is a 5 or 6 just to succeed. And then you've got some statistics for firearms. I'm not going to go through that. You have your firing modes, explosives, and so on and so forth. The fuse and stuff is kind of fun with explosives. Number of rounds before it detonates. And I think we definitely engaged with that one time where we set this bomb off and we had to. Did we set it really short fuse? I don't remember if we set it short or we set it long. I'm not sure. We didn't end up getting any drones, but it's cool they're there. But you can get virtual reality sickness. Virtual reality is what we're living in. All right, and then we got taking damage. So you do have a number of hit points for your body parts, and obviously this is how you can die and whatnot. So when you take damage, you roll in some 2d6 to determine which body part is hit. When applicable, you roll a d6 to determine which side. 1 to 3 hits the right side of the body, and 4 to 6 hits the left. And you have some different damage types. If it's localized, when the hits dealt by an enemy's attack are a single value, e.g. mandibles 3, hit strikes a single body part. When hits dealt by an enemy's attack are determined by dice, e.g. acid spray 1d3, each hit strikes a random body part. A body part bleeds if it takes 2 or more hits in a turn, is reduced to 0, or has 0 hit points when hit. A bleeding body part loses 1 hit point at the start of your turn until treated. A bleeding limb with 0 hit points drains 1 hit point from the torso instead, and a torso with 0 hit points drains 1 hit point from the head. And basically your head reaches 0, you die. So I know I got hit in the arm, I think, or the leg, and we were able to end up healing it up. But obviously you want to try to avoid being hit. Limbs with 0 hit points are ruined, and attempts to make use of them are performed at disadvantage. You can amputate. An amputated limb bleeds at twice the normal rate. Actions that would ordinarily make use of the missing limbs are performed at severe disadvantage. Well, then you probably don't want to amputate it unless it's poisoned or some blood worm from the third moon is creeping up through there and it's going to kill you. Fatigued, when an ability score is reduced to 0, it can no longer be used to take actions of that kind. When your torso is reduced to 0, your bone score becomes 0 and you can no longer take a breather. You can continue to take free actions, including speaking and firing your weapon. So that's kind of like, you're sort of knocked down, but you still have some wherewithal. And like I say, you get to 0 for your head, you're dead. You do have these energizers that basically you can just stick in yourself. There's one rage, but then you can get, so these aren't different ones, but basically these are these kind of side effects. You can get into a rage, you can get a sickness, or you can kind of crash and burn. And then you have emotional outbursts. Witnessing another member's death, suffering a limb amputation, or being subjected to a gruesome and horrific conditions requires you to resist nerves. On a failure, roll in the emotional outburst table below. You can hyperventilate, have a nervous breakdown. I might coward. I don't know. It kind of fits with the theme, but feels like I would just go with a PTSD maybe instead. You can go berserk. You can persevere, which is good, or you can even get an adrenaline surge. And then we got some threats. We fought a lot of bugs, I think. What did we find? Did we find the swarms? We got roachlings, roaches swarms, creepers, skimmers, hoppers, and spewers. We definitely fought skimmers because we saw some with wings. Unless they were, let's see. The roaches don't have wings. Good. Yeah. And then we've got our firearms. I don't remember what I had. No, I didn't have a Reaper. Did I have a raid? Which one of these? Did I have the garden? I think I had the guard snake. I want to say I had the light machine gun. Was what my character had. And you have different magazines. We have some medical gear, energizers, melee gear, explosive armor, equipment. And then I'll leave this. I won't go through Occam's razor because, download the free thing and check it out. So I guess what I want to say about it, I don't know if I have anything really to say. I don't know if it's self-evident in terms of just what I've been reading through. It's a really fun system. Now I played as a one-shot, and it seems like a really good one-shot system. I'm not gonna say it's bad at doing a campaign with. To me, when I look at this and say, if I was gonna run a campaign, what I'd want to do is basically run it like episodes from basically like you had an 80s TV show. If you had something like A Team in Space, except you're dirtbags, so you're not necessarily picking your own missions, or maybe you get to pick from a little roster, but you're essentially these guys who are, like I said, bottom rungs of society, working whatever, doing the most horrible kind of jobs. You're garbage men in space with guns, setting off. That's how I would probably run it, and and have it kind of episodic. I just think that I like the freedom that lets you play your characters, whether you're not worried about making it through some kind of grand arc. It's like, no, we're just going to go, and at the end, we'll kind of reset. And it can even be whatever happens. It's like a cartoon or something, or whatever happens in the next season, next episode, we'll be back. even though at the end of whatever this episode, we got two of us were blown up, one of us was sucked out of an airlock, and the other one was eaten by space snakes. The next episode, we'll be back, not too much the worse for wear, and set off on another adventure. I think it works really well for that. This is just the quick start. I have not read the full rules. I'll see with I'll have to hit up Jean-Luc about if there's anything I can share from that or what he wants to do with that. Again, I am biased since I gave a quote to it. I played through it. I know the creator, but I did have a good time. Everybody who played had a good time. I think it's worth whatever you end up, if you end up giving this a look on Kickstarter. Not grab the Quickstart guide. It's pretty much got everything you need. It's not hard to just come up with something. I mean, if you've ever thought of taking kind of, like I said, an 80s sci-fi-ish kind of grungy concept and running with it, it's a really great little system. And I didn't mean to do this. This wasn't really planned. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do, and I thought, well, you know what, this Dirtbags thing, just the quick start guide came out, and might as well look at it. So that's what I did. So that's all I've got, folks. Anybody got anything before I give it up for the day? Also, hey Vince, thanks, and Jason, thanks. I will try to make notes with multiple places. I am going away next week on Tuesday. So it'll be pretty radio silent from Tuesday through next weekend. I will put up a couple of things for mine. I might try to get up a couple of videos to just sort of post while I'm gone. I always want to do that and say I'm going to do that, and then I don't. We'll see if I do any better with that this time. But yeah, so it might be light for me across both channels next week, but I'll try to post more about that. I've got game night tonight, so I'm gonna get out to game. So definitely check out the Dirtbags Quick Starter. At the minimum, just grab the Quick Start. And then if you like the universal reactions, it's just out there on Itch, and also for Patreon folks. If you're on Patreon, you can grab it, or if you're on Itch, you can grab it. It's free. All right, folks. Keep saying folks. Have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody. And I will talk to you later. Bye now.